episode. This is up there with 3 and 5 as these, beautiful tragic vignettes that are little interludes from the overall story of Joel and Ellie. This one's so good. It's as good as the other two, and they set a high bar. So episode 7 is actually based on The Last of Us's DLC, a bonus round for you non-gamers, that was released on Valentine's Day 2014, about a year after the original game debuted. So perfect. As I've said before, if only they could have timed the release schedule so that this came out for Valentine's Day this year. It was beautiful, because it's the story of the first and last epic date night for Riley and Ellie. And speaking of love, it's also a love letter to Mortal Kombat. Wow, what a nice thing for Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin to do. But particularly Neil Druckmann, because he comes from the gaming community and he knows what this means. I mean, this was incredible. Mortal Kombat is having itself a banner week. What with Zazzy leaking Mortal Kombat 12 on the Warner Brothers Discovery earning call on Thursday, where Mortal Kombat 12, by the way, trended top 10 in the United States for hours, more than any other announcement on that call. Yeah, video games. And of course now this. Now, Mortal Kombat was first added to The Last of Us with the 2022 remake remastering of the original game, with a Mortal Kombat 2 poster added to Ellie and Riley's room, which of course is also on episode 7, and a couple of eagle-eyed fans and news sites spotted that addition. But now, Mortal Kombat is a huge part of The Last of Us's legacy, that Riley is a big fan of, and the game that really brings her and Ellie together. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, this is like product placement that people would kill for. I've never seen such, can you think of any other really good product placement like this? I mean, this is next level. And I don't even think that it was advertising. I think that Neil Druckmann needed a game and he chose Mortal Kombat. I hope he explains why he made that choice. But it's really, some people think that maybe it speaks to Mortal Kombat, maybe in some ways laying the groundwork so that The Last of Us could years later exist. It's fascinating. I love it. And again, video games supporting video games. Now on that note, let's talk about the people who make video games, because episode 7 is the second episode written entirely by Neil Druckmann. He also wrote episode 2, and he's the co-writer of the season finale, episode 9, along with Craig Mazin, who wrote all the other episodes himself. Craig Mazin wrote those. To see the creative force behind the game so heavily involved in the adaptation of the game is fantastic, and it's turning out so well. I mean, talk about a proof of concept. I think this could potentially open the door for other game creators to become driving forces in adaptations of their games as well. And on that note, Warner Brothers, interestingly behind both game adaptations, maybe that's another thing that maybe compelled them to go with Mortal Kombat since they're all part of the same company. Well, Naughty Dog, I believe, was independent, but now it's part of Warner Brothers because this, of course, is, basically a Warner Brothers show on HBO and HBO Max. But Warner Brothers is investing heavily in Mortal Kombat as a brand, company-wide. So maybe we'll see Ed Boon more involved in, say, the Mortal Kombat sequel? I believe he's already involved in the animated movies, but will he get to a point where maybe he can have a Neil Druckmann level of involvement? I mean, this could happen for game creators across the board at multiple studios, because up until now, the studios have said, thanks, we'll take it from here, and then they dropped it. That's basically what's been happening. And everyone's like, that's ridiculous. So I think the success of The Last of Us, what Neil Druckmann does for Mortal Kombat here is beautiful. And Neil Druckmann actually might be doing so much more for so many video games and their creators. Oh, it's so beautiful. All right, so we'll break down Riley and Ellie's epic date in just a moment. But first, let's talk about the point of this episode. Because, this is a very well-written show. Nothing happens by accident, besides being a really charming romantic interlude. Well, so far in these standalone episodes, we've seen two couples, Bill and Frank, a married couple, and Henry and Sam, brothers, that both chose death. In some cases to go out the way they wanted and because they didn't want to be around without the other anymore. And I think this episode offers an alternative, interestingly enough, to both those scenarios. Because when Riley and Ellie both received their death sentence, by the way, the first time this episode was given out to press, it did not have the VFX completed. And I can tell you that Ellie's bite is 100% CGI. Isn't that amazing? It looks practical. I can't believe that it's like a more, from a production standpoint, they decided to go, I mean, wouldn't it be more expensive than to do it practical? But that is, and I'm impressed with the VFX, because, you know, it looks practical, but that's 100% a CGI wound. And then also the dripping blood on Riley is also CGI. I mean, that the mark is practical, but, you know, what really sells it is CGI. I guess they didn't want to risk not getting the blood drip just right. Anyway, again, Riley and Ellie, you know, Ellie doesn't know she's immune, obviously. They choose to take whatever time they can get, especially since they just started their romance. That's a very important distinction. Bill and Frank got to have their romance. We saw their first and last date too, but they were decades apart. Think about the tragedy of Riley and Ellie's first and last date being the same night. That's just, and also, again, themes, picking up where Bill and Frank left off, being a reflection or a distortion of that, but also complementary. Really good writing. Really good writing. You know, it's very rare to see this level of writing in any medium. This is like Alan Moore level stuff, Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. Alan Moore level. And Alan Moore actually wrote one of the best things I've ever seen about talking about how difficult it is to write for different mediums, because they all have different needs and, you know, the way they work and the way they're formatted. And the fact that Neil Druckmann, with Craig Mazin's assistance, but here it was all Neil Druckmann, although I'm sure Craig Mazin assisted, but the fact that he was able to adapt to a different medium, television, from video games, is also incredible. All right, so anyway, not only do Riley and Ellie make the choice to lose their minds together, which was, you know, really poetic, as they said, but once Riley dies, Ellie realizes she's immune, and she makes the choice to keep going. She could have been like, I don't want to be here without Riley, as Bill and Henry did. But she keeps going, just like Joel does. So that shows the similarity in personality. Not everybody thinks the same. This is a lesson that everyone has to learn in life. You know, I think early on, you apply your same train of thought to everyone else. But I think, you know, life will be a lot easier for you, or at least make more sense, if you realize that everybody thinks differently, or there are different groups of thought. And a big part of it is guessing or figuring out which group of thought a person belongs to, so you can better anticipate their moves and also understand them. So that's fascinating. So Ellie and Joel are very much cut from the same cloth, because Joel kept going not only after he lost Sarah, but also after he lost Tess. And so this is why, even when it seems like the end of the line for Joel, Ellie won't give up on him until the last possible minute. Just like she did with Riley. And Riley, to some degree, taught her that. I thought that was beautiful. And I also think that after Joel tells Ellie she has no idea what loss is, we find out that Ellie very much knows what loss is. I mean, I think obviously it's in a different context, but that doesn't mean it's not as deep and as painful a loss. This episode also gives us tremendous insight into Ellie as a person, from her leadership abilities to her backstory. She's been very closed off for most of the series. And also to her being LGBT, a huge part of The Last of Us Part 2. And on that note, that's right, I missed Dina last week. I did a lot of my homework on Part 1, but I have not looked into Part 2 so much intentionally, so I didn't know about Dina. But I saw the internet explode with joy last week, so I wanted to point it out to those of you who, like myself, who missed it. So fans believe that's Dina, Ellie's future girlfriend, who spots her at the commune in last week's episode. And I believe it is Dina, although Neil Druckmann said that it's maybe Dina. He and Craig Mazin said maybe, and I believe that's because they want to leave the door open to potentially recast the role for season 2, which has already been greenlit, just like, you know, Marvel recast Cassie Lang. I think that actress looks perfect for Dina, quite frankly, but, you know, now that the show is such a big hit, they might want to get a bigger name, etc., etc. Although recasting Cassie didn't work out so well, so be careful, tread carefully. You don't necessarily need a star, you could make a star. All right, but that was a fantastic first moment for them to meet, and I think, you know, that's why I wanted to point it out, because talk about a spicy meet cute. I thought that was, so I think that's great. And that I believe is not from the games. So that was really a nice addition. Now, speaking of firsts, let's talk about Ellie's first love. I'm not sure if it's her first love. I think it is, but it's certainly their first date. Now, how about the sets for this episode? Holy moly. And they were just for this episode. They never get to reuse them. Yet still, the production team went above and beyond. From the rooftop sequence, very comic booky, but also a little West Side Story, too, with a Romeo and Juliet situation, but this time between FEDRA and the Fireflies. Oh, I think that's great. And also, of course, the mall. What a mall. By the way, that fake movie is an Easter egg from the games, Dawn of the Wolf Part 2. I believe Dawn of the Wolf is a series of books in the first game, and then that sequel doesn't show up until the second game, but it was funny to have it here, and I think fans will appreciate that. When the lights first turn on, truly magical. And as someone who doesn't get to go to the mall very often, let me tell you, it's pretty awesome when you do get to go. Some of you might be jaded to the wonders of the mall, but for the rest of us, it's pretty awesome. And Ellie's never been to the mall. Kudos to Bella Ramsey this episode. She's really, I think, taking over this role. She's fantastic. But here, she doesn't oversell, which is important, that Ellie has never seen any of this stuff. Even an escalator. And she made that believable without it being stupid or comedic. It seemed real. Not like Elf, which was great as well, but, a very different tone. I also love the will they or won't they dynamic this episode between Ellie and Riley, a Hollywood staple. It's a staple because it's so relatable, because so many of us go through that in life, apocalypse or not, where you're not sure if the other person is interested in you as just a friend or maybe something more. So episode 7 is full of great moments, but my favorite by far is this shot on the carousel with Ellie stealing a romantic look up at Riley. That's gorgeous. I think that just perfectly captures their date night and this episode. So yes, there are many fantastic moments of Ellie and Riley both testing the waters of potential romance. That's a pretty forward Victoria's Secret hypothetical, though, by the way. I was like, whoa, shots fired. And then also Riley holding on a little too long in the photo booth. Riley's got game. And she's also quite the romantic and an amazing planner that she put this date together and thought everything out so that it went so smoothly, well, as smoothly as it could go. I mean, wow. Not only is that an act of love, but it speaks to what's so great about Riley and how special she is. Kudos to Storm Reid, too, this episode, she does a fantastic job bringing Riley to life. Now, Riley must have just not taken FEDRA school very seriously, because she definitely has valuable qualities. And so I don't understand why she was assigned such a literal crap detail. We'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. But she might not be a leader like Ellie. I don't see leader qualities there, but she definitely has something to offer. And maybe that's why Marlene, recruited her. Marlene definitely saw something and trusted her to build and prep explosives. That's not nothing. So what a date. A date so epic, it even had a title. The 4 Wonders, make that 5 Wonders, of the Mall. All right out of the DLC, by the way, but brought to life so well here that the show makes the story its own, which is how you do an adaptation right. The Last of Us, to its credit, and I wish other adaptations would realize this, never just checks boxes. The carousel, when that carousel stopped, I was like, is there an infected person in there? I got scared. And carousels, by the way, have a long, wonderful history in Hollywood, from Mary Poppins to Strangers on a Train. And that's just the 2 that instantly came to me. I think there are plenty of other, instances as well. If you can think of any, leave them down below. The photo booth, really right out of the game, ripped right out of the game. And I wonder why these photos never come up again. I imagine Ellie still has them. Maybe we will see them again someday, because I think they're also probably very painful to look at. The arcade! Oh, I loved shining a spotlight on girl gamers, and that Riley and Ellie genuinely enjoy Mortal Kombat all on their own. They just actually love it. To see them having a great time in the arcade after seeing so many movies and TV shows showcase mostly guys in arcades is really awesome. We even get to see some old school Mortal Kombat 2 gameplay complete with very early motion capture. And of course, Riley is a Mileena fan who is not only Mortal Kombat's, I believe, most popular female character, she's like the Wanda of Mortal Kombat, come to think of it. But she's an LGBT character as well. Great choice. Both the photo booth and the arcade, by the way, need money to work. And it's weird to see that money has become so worthless that it's literally lying around on the floor discarded. But you needed it. You needed as a token, really, as a token to get this stuff to work. Again, that Riley, she thought it all out. I'm impressed. And I think it was a really interesting choice that while they were in the arcade, the sound of them having a good time and playing the game awakens an infected over in the American Girl store. Talk about the total opposite of the arcade. Yet also, Riley and Ellie are American girls. Isn't that gorgeous? Look at that. Look at that synergy. Their story actually plays like an apocalyptic, very modern version of American Girl classic stories, which are great, by the way. The books, were always my favorite part of American Girls. Kudos to American Girl, by the way, for agreeing to this product placement. That is very cool of them. And I wish that they would factor it into the stories. Maybe they will now that they've appeared, but I definitely think there's crossover potential there. So the date is going so well that they almost kiss here. And I think that Ellie just can't take being in romantic limbo anymore, which is why she tries to say, okay, peace out, I gotta go home. But Riley promises her a gift, which is volume 2 of the pun book, which of course we've been seeing in other episodes. And I love that they have no idea what screenshots are. Hilarious and fascinating. But the discovery of the explosives underscores that Riley and Ellie really are now on different sides of a civil war. And it doesn't seem like they can get on the same side, especially since Riley is being moved to the Atlanta Fireflies base, and Marlene won't let her take Ellie, even though she asked. Put a pin in that. So they think this is their last night together, and it is, but it ends up being their last night, of course, for a very different reason. So Ellie decides to put it all on the line, and because, when she finds out that Riley's being reassigned to a different city and they're never going to see each other again, Ellie just goes for it. And, she asks Riley why she brought her to the mall, because it clearly wasn't for recruitment, because she's not allowed to bring Ellie with her to Atlanta. And I liked this scene because so much is left unsaid in real life between people who are being very careful with themselves and their emotions. Because Riley blinks. She said, I just wanted to say goodbye. And Ellie's like, well, you did it. And she storms off. But she can't leave her. So that brings us to the fifth wonder of them all, Spirit Halloween. They're truly everywhere. They didn't actually say it was a Spirit Halloween, but it's a Spirit Halloween. And I think that's hilarious. This was not only a beautiful scene, but particularly well filmed. The lighting on that counter space, I looked up the game, it didn't look this good. So I love that. I love the way the counter space was lit, but I kept waiting for that glass to break beneath their feet. I was like, we don't need to dance on the counter, it's okay. Riley and Ellie, we don't need to bleed out on our first date. So Riley and Ellie really, they were perfect for each other. What a great match. And I love that they're not Hollywood's classic girly girls. A lot of women aren't classic girly girls, LGBT or straight. And so I just loved this representation in many ways. And they do finally kiss, and they do decide to stay together. It was such a gorgeous moment, and it was so great to see them, to go for it and to be rewarded for that. I thought that was really nice. But then the music brings the infected right to them. I'm really surprised that despite Riley about to graduate from FEDRA school and Ellie having spent her whole life in one, that they weren't more effective. And I think that speaks to, they weren't. So how weren't they effective? Riley never scouted them all. You would think the first thing she would do would scout them all for infected, and she had a gun and kill them and make so they wouldn't surprise her. And then also taking down the infected, even when they had a gun and there were bullets left over, because they were thinking of using the bullets on themselves. But I think that this is an intentional choice. And it doesn't speak to, Riley and Ellie not doing a good job in FEDRA school, but instead it speaks to how all militaries throughout history don't really train recruits, but instead give them a false sense of security. And that recruits are so young, with so little experience, not just in combat, but in life. What is a big thing that makes Joel effective? Experience. What's he giving Ellie that's making her more effective? Experience. So that's really interesting to me. And they did kill the infected, but not before they both got bitten, and decide to, again, enjoy every last moment that they can together, finally, as girlfriends. And I thought that was gorgeous, only for Ellie to discover that she's immune. And, we never see that moment where, Riley slips away, but, it's alluded to. It's very sad, very sad. But again, Ellie decided to keep going. A couple of other observations. When we see the photo of the captain's family on his desk, because this is The Last of Us, I was like, did they too suffer a horrible, tragic death? I liked that captain, though, and I appreciated the complex, realistic view of FEDRA. He doesn't try to indoctrinate Ellie. He doesn't feed her some conspiracy theory. He just levels with her. And I believe that FEDRA, at least in Boston, is really trying. I mean, hey, I've been on Twitter. It's hard to maintain order, especially when people have lost all hope and have nothing to lose anymore. I mean, it's like, do you think Twitter's bad? Imagine the apocalypse. So I don't think FEDRA, the Fireflies, or even the Commune can do an ideal job and actually get the job done. I mean, they were only on that Commune for a little bit. I'm sure it's not a utopia there either. And I'm sure that some people don't like the Commune. I mean, it's hard to get some people in line, and that's just a harsh reality of life. Now, of course, this is just a snapshot. We don't really know everything the captain's done and how honest he's really being with us or himself. But I liked the guy, and I think he did something really important for Ellie. He taught her to think things out, something they should be teaching at FEDRA school. But he teaches her to think about the likely consequences tomorrow for today's actions, and to think out the path ahead of you before you decide whether or not you want to walk down it, and to identify other potential paths. It's a very important skill in life. And Riley even does that. So that's great to have that come back. That callback when she thinks about the path FEDRA has now put her on with sewage detail. She rejects it. By the way, Joel signs up, you might recall, for sewage detail in episode 1 for extra credits. Also, the comic Ellie is reading is not only from episode 5, but it's the exact comic from the game, down to the artwork. And as Ellie reads it, it made me think that she probably, that's a man and a woman working together, that she probably feels that's her and Joel when they finally team up later on. We also see the first volume of the pun book and Ellie's knife. Put a pin in that as well. Finally, the bookends of the episode are, of course, Joel being severely wounded, and he tells Ellie to leave him. Reeling from his nightmare come true, he has failed Ellie. He tells her, go back to Tommy. Go back to the original plan. Go back to Tommy. And when he sees her go up the stairs, he thinks there's like a very strong chance this is the last time that she's listening to him, and this is it. And you see a tear roll down his cheek, and that was pretty amazing. But instead, she finds a needle and thread, slightly different from the DLC. And the DLC, she was exploring another mall, which I guess is what made her think of I guess they didn't want to build 2 malls for this show, which I understand. And I actually kind of like it a little bit better this way. But I don't know, the mall works, hey, I remember that last time I was in a mall. But she's in an abandoned mall in the DLC, and she finds a downed helicopter that has an abandoned medical kit in it. And so that's where she gets the needle and thread from. But here, it's just a dirty needle and thread, like from a sewing kit that's been like in a drawer for like 20 years. And let me tell you, I was pretty surprised she didn't sterilize that needle, at least with fire. I'd be like, you're not going to put that in a fire? Or give Joel something to bite down on for the pain so he doesn't bite his own tongue off. I mean, I'd be like, I thought you'd have passed out by now, Joel. Too bad you're such a tough SOB. So what did they teach at FEDRA school? How does she not even know those basics? And it just goes to show how much you learn from movies and TV, and how that was also a loss to Ellie that she didn't get to watch movies and TV growing up either, because I never had to sew anybody up, and I didn't take a first aid class, yet I know that she should have cleansed it with fire and given him something to bite down on. All right, so that's my breakdown of The Last of Us episode 7. Share your own thoughts down below if you played the DLC or if you're new to this story. Subscribe today, and I'll see you next week for a very shocking episode 8. People who played the game know what I'm talking about. All right, again, share those thoughts down below. Subscribe today, and you can check out some more videos right now.